Hello.
Hi, hello
Morning,
friends, hello
PT.
everyone, hello PT.
Hello. Hello, guys. How are you all doing?
Good,
Good.
good, all good.
Better, in fact, the few news from on COVID on the positive side, some vaccine at least at some part of the world, and more than that, you're the right person to begin with. Yeah. You know what is happening. You're a science person, you're a doctor, and beyond everything, Dr. Peter Hudson, who is our conservation head, a fabulous human and a great photographer. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you, Peter.
today is going to talk more about the spirit bears from uh, the
Canada?
Great Bear Rainforest.
Yeah.
Yeah, PT?
Yes, absolutely. Shall I
Yeah,
start?
Thank you.
Tell me when you want me to start.
You can
yeah,
start.
Okay, well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. If I talk about white bears, your mind immediately goes to the polar bears, animals that live in the high Arctic and move around over vast distances looking for seals and food, jumping between icebergs. They're really marine mammals in many ways. And you probably have not heard about the spirit bear, another bear that is found that is white and also lives in North America. When you think about North America, I think you would often think about Yellowstone, the Tetons, the Rockies, and your mind goes to wolves, and you think about grizzly bears. But there are only 8 bear species, including the giant panda, in the whole of the world. So this is special that we have at least 3 of these in North America: the brown bear, which includes the grizzly, the black bear, and of course the polar bear. So how does the spirit bear fit into this? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So we need to start by saying this white bear is not an albino. So don't get muddled up by that. If you look at the eyes are colored. These not pink eyes. So this animal is not lacking in color. It's the fact that it is just simply white. And it lives in this remarkably beautiful Great Bear Rainforest. And I'm going to show you where it is in a minute, but this is the biggest temperate rainforest in the world. Rich, it rains all the time, it's incredibly wet, and it's hard to move through. And these bears live in this beautiful environment, which means it's just such a great place to catch photographs, even though it's raining all the time and the light is very challenging. Some of the best times to go and see these bears is about now, from now onward through to October. And these bears then come to the rivers, and there's rivers and streams everywhere in the Great Bear Rainforest, and where they catch and pull out dead salmon out of the river that they then feed on and move around from the river. They'll carry those away into the rainforest. I can't tell you how important the salmon are to the whole ecology of this forest. Some recent research has shown that 80% of the nitrogen, that's the protein that you find in the forest trees, actually comes from the salmon. And you can be 100 kilometers from the sea and still find the imprint of the salmon, as it were, in the trees. Because what happens are the bears, like the spirit bears and the other bears that feed on it, kill the salmon and carry them there. So here is an ecosystem that's really run from the nutrients coming from the sea that come up the river and then drive the whole ecology of this one place. And the salmon are absolutely essential, and the bears themselves play a special role.
PT.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Can I interrupt in between?
Of course.
Can you please click that hide button on the screen?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Because we are not able to see.
Can you still see me? Can you still see my screen?
No.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, now I can. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. I think it's wonderful going there to photograph these bears, and I'll mention a little bit about photography, but I'm going to talk mostly about their conservation. This is one of my favorite photographs I took there, which I call the necklace of water. The bear shaking, the spirit bear shaking, and you can see the water spinning off the animal's head as it's in the river looking for fish. Here's another one with the bear quite close, and you can see the water streaming off the side of the face. So where do you find them? Where is this place? Where is the Great Bear Rainforest? Well, it's in British Columbia, in Canada. So we're talking about north and west of the United States. Just north of the border is Vancouver. And then north of that, between there and Alaska, is this huge Great Bear Rainforest. 12,000 square miles. That's more than twice the size of the Serengeti National Park. That's incredible. And it is the largest temperate rainforest in the world, with something like 3 meters of rain every year. There are no roads through this place. So when you want to get there, you have to fly from Vancouver right the way up to somewhere like Port George, and then you can get down to places like Kitmat, where you can then get on a boat. The alternative is you go to Prince Rupert on the coast, and then you take a seaplane and you fly down, but no roads. So you either have to go by boat or you fly in and get collected by a boat. And where you want to get to are down amongst these islands, because it's on these islands that the spirit bears actually exist. And that green area is the conservation agreement area for the Great Bear Rainforest, which has special restrictions on it and helps with the conservation. But I'm going to come back to that and talk a bit more about that later. So the way I got there is, well, first of all, I went with my son, and this is my son, Tom, and we're on this wonderful yacht called Ocean Light 2. And we arranged with the yacht for a small group of us to go there and to sail down through the islands and looking for spirit bears and looking for the other wildlife as we're going through these areas. And it's a beautiful yacht, and it's such a delight. And if you're worried about seasickness, you're in amongst the islands, so there's hardly any roll on the boat at all. The person who really drives what happens and allows people, because this is in First Nations country. So it's important to realize this is the land that belongs to the First Nations, and in particular, the Gitgat community. And Marvin Robinson is the person who runs and allows people to go or not go to go and see the bears. So he's a very important person. And Tim Irvin is somebody who runs a company who can help you get in contact with Marvin and arrange for you to go and visit. So Ocean Light 2 BC, British Columbia, Canada, or Tim Irvin are two great places if you're interested in going down there. Of course, as you take the boat down, you see some wonderful life along the shores and in amongst the islands. Of course, the harbour seals, when they're like this, lying out at low tide, just sunbathing a bit, always happy to see you. The water is this remarkable sort of turquoise, rich blue, and then you see things, some amazing sea life, such as these jellyfish which get blown along, and that coupled with the colours in the water is really quite beautiful. Of course, there's a lot of bird life as well, and particularly the bald eagle. The bald eagle is something that's fairly abundant, and it's there looking, of course, to get to try and catch the salmon at this time of year. Much smaller is the American dipper, and here it is. It's caught a small fish, this American dipper, but deep in the forest. And this is the challenge for the photography, because it is so dark in there that you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to keep your ISOs down anywhere near 3,200, particularly if you're after animals that are moving fairly fast. Of course, when the light does hit, it's absolutely beautiful. And this is a grizzly bear. So the grizzly bears are found on the mainland, and they're not found on the islands. On the islands is where you find the spirit bears themselves. And you can see this, this guy's just caught a salmon and he's got a bit of it left there between his feet, but of such beautiful light. And the real challenge when you're photographing bears is just trying to even see their eyes, let alone get a bit of eye catch in their eyes. So this was taken from a Zodiac inflatable boat, and I'm lying as low as I possibly can, trying to catch that eye reflection as I drift slowly towards this bear. There are coastal wolves, and this is the only photograph I got there of a coastal wolf. We saw this one very early in the morning. The light was really bad, but there he is, just scanning the beach. They're very different from the grey wolves in that they don't have a big shaggy coat, but I plan to go back and try and get more photographs of these elusive and very special animals. The light can be to your advantage. So once again, I'm still here with grizzly bears, trying to photograph them backlit, and you can get the ring of fire, the lovely outline of the light against the back of the grizzly bear, as it's dark in these dark places, often difficult. And then you can, in fact, there are two bears in that, but the light is just hitting this young cub as it's shaking in the water, and just to its right there that you can't actually see is its mother out of the light. The other great thing, and indeed many people like to go just for this, are for the whales, and the whales are really incredible. There are lots of humpback whales. You will find pods of them and you can stay with them for quite some time. And with this very dark background, you can often pick up this spout as it comes out of the water and first of all empties its lungs, and that's when the spray comes out and then fills it up. Sometimes they're very close to the boat, although I have to say their breath is absolutely chokingly ghastly. You ever smelt lion's breath, which is pretty awful? I can tell you, I think the whales actually beat them, because it really is a dreadful, dreadful smell when they breathe out. These pods, there's often females with their young together, and they will often come up together, and sometimes you get two of them come up together against this really beautiful black background, and you can get some beautiful patterns when you do that. And of course, they will sometimes show you their flukes, and you can actually identify with the individual whales by the patterns and the shapes on their flukes. But look here. Look down that left-hand side. You see these marks? These are the marks of an orca whale, which has tried to kill this individual when it was younger, grabbed it by the tail, and the individual has pulled its tail away and escaped, but left these huge scars that the killer whale had put on the tail of the whale just before it swam away. What you can get occasionally is this whale breaching in the sound. Just stunning. And this photograph, I don't want to hesitate for a minute, was not taken by me. I think all the others were, but this one was taken by my son, Tom, and he caught it. You do not know where they're going to come up. You do not know when they're going to come up. Sometimes a whale may breach 2 or 3 times, but if you're looking in the wrong place, you haven't got it. And Tom nailed this one. He was the only one of us in the whole trip who managed to capture this breaching whale. And this whale, just absolutely huge, throwing itself out of the water. And Tom managed to capture this photograph as it was just about to fall back in. Beautiful, beautiful photograph. So who are spirit bears? Who are these bears then? Who are these white bears that we see? Well, the black bears have 16 different subspecies. And this one that occurs up here is the Kermode bear. That's only found here on coastal British Columbia. All those other subspecies are found in different parts of their distribution, down in Mexico, in Arizona, and then they occur right across northern Canada and come to where I live here in Pennsylvania. So I can actually see bears almost on a daily event in my own yard. And here's a little video that I took 2-3 weeks ago of a bear that was in my yard. So this is my heating system, my trailer there, and this bear I call Bruno, and he's a 2-year-old bear that's just walked out of the woods, and he's just been kicked out by his mother. And if you hear, I then actually say, "That's
come on, Bruno. You should move along now, Bruno."
He's just getting a bit close.
You should be coming this way.
Just asking him very politely to go back in the woods. I love this. Look at this. He looks under the vehicle. He looks under my truck to see what I'm there. And then he moves off. So I regularly see bears on the, let me get this back up. I regularly see black bears in my garden. And Bruno was back a couple of days ago. He's grown quite a bit. He's put on a lot of weight, but he came back to radar bird feeders and just say hello, I guess. So spirit bears are in fact Kermode bears. And there is a black form of Kermode bears, which looks very much like the black bears that you see in my garden, in my yard. And so these bears, but there they occur both as black and as white bears. And I love this photograph, because I waited and waited for the Kermode bear to walk into this bit of light and just hoped to be able to catch the reflection again in his eye. And you can see it was all dark. And then just as he walked in, I snapped the shot and got the photograph. And this is a typical way that the bear looks at you. They are very worried about people. They don't want to look you in the face because they don't want to be threatening. So they do this furtive glimpse at you where they sort of look sideways just to see what you're doing and see what you're up to. So spirit bears are just a white bear variant, and many of them exist as these Kermode bears, this black bear, and they are there close to the spirit bears catching fish. This one is a bear that the local First Nations person told me was called Kimbo, named after the famous fighter Kimbo Slice, because he'd got into a very bad fight, we think, with one of the females that had cubs. And the females are very defensive, and she slashed his face, and there was this whole lump of skin hanging off his face that's actually grown back up. But he learned a big lesson by going too close to a female bear at that time of year. So why are they white? Why are these beautiful bears white and some of them are black? You can see females like this female, see that it's raining, typical rainforest. It rains or it's sprinkling water all the time. So you're wet nearly all of the time. And in all honesty, I'm probably lying in the river at this point, and it doesn't really matter because you're so wet. So you might as well lie in the river if you want to get the shot you're after. But white bears can have black cubs. Black females can have white cubs. And of course, white females can have white cubs as well. So this is all down to the genetics about what is taking place. This is another one of a female with a black cub, and one of my favorite shots, taken at just about 6 o'clock in the evening when it was so dark, could hardly see this bear. And I was using a Sony camera, and I used a topaz denoise to remove the noise of this photograph to bring out the bear and the reflection. And I think it's remarkable software. So get the denoise topaz AI when you have very high ISO numbers. So I think the ISO here was probably 25,000 plus. It really was incredibly high. But by denoising it, I've been able to not only bring back her and her reflection, but also her very cute cub that's sitting there as well. This was taken a little bit later, and it's almost pitch dark at this point, but still the topaz managed to do a relatively good job about bringing those back. And very special photographs to get these two together. We were really, I just thought, fantastically fortunate to see this. So let me give you a bit of science, and I'm going to give you genetics 101. So there is on the chromosomes of these bears, a gene known as the NC1R. And at this location, you can have two alleles which determine whether you're going to be black or white. But every bear has two alleles. And what this does is it produces a protein that influences melanin production, and so determines the skin and hair color. If you have an A allele, then you're going to be black, and this is dominant. So it doesn't matter if you have an A and a G, you always will be black. Of course, if you have two A's, because remember, once again, you get one from your mum and one from your dad, then you're going to be black. And only if you have two G's are you going to actually get white. So let me try and explain that a little bit better. If you take a black bear and cross it with another black bear, and both of them have the A alleles, a double A allele, then all the babies are going to be double A. And similarly, if you take the white bears with the double G and you cross them, all their babies are going to be double G. But when you cross one of these bears, AA, with GG, all the young are going to get an allele from the mother and one from the father, and they're all going to be black. But they're going to carry that recessive allele. So depending on who they mate with, but all the babies are black in this situation. When the GG mates with an AG, then 50% are going to be white and 50% of them are going to be black, but all will carry the recessive allele. All of them will have the G, and they can pass that on and produce another white bear. In the situation when you have two heterozygotes, AG and AG, interact, then 75% of their babies are going to be recessive. 75% of those are going to be black and 25% white. Now, I know that's a lot of genetics, but I think it's interesting. And as a scientist, I'm fascinated by it. And it is really simple, straightforward genetics. And it determines what happens with this very specialized genotypic variant. So the spirit bear is a specialized black bear. A recent study has identified that there's something between 100 and 500 bears carrying that G allele. And what that probably means is that there's only 40 to say 100 that are truly white bears out there. This bear, I just remembered, is called Maha. She's a 20-year-old female, and she's been a very successful female with it, but she's getting really on. I hope she survived the winter. I don't know if she did. I haven't heard any news that they've seen her this year, but she was really struggling. She clearly had arthritis, and she's getting near the end of her life, but she's produced a lot of white babies. And one of the dominant males in this area was another white bear called Boss, and those two, I think, produce quite a lot of white babies. So it really does depend on who are the successful mothers and who are the successful fathers. And this causes an issue in conservation. Conservation genetics is always about maintaining diversity, trying to keep the genetic diversity by keeping populations connected. In conservation, we don't want small populations. Small populations get inbred. You see mutants, or you see genotypes arise, which won't do well in the population. So the best thing is to keep the population as big as possible. And when you have limited area for habitat for the animals, the best thing is to connect those together. So take another example. When you go to Nairobi National Park and see the lion population, those lions can move from there to other parts of the Serengeti, but they have long ways to go. They're really quite isolated. They have to go through difficult habitat to find other lions. So they're very much isolated, and there could be genetic problems arise as a consequence of that. So what we do in conservation is produce wildlife corridors so that the animals can move and the genes can move, and we can keep the population connected. This we don't want to happen with our spirit bears. And within the last few weeks, there's a very interesting research article produced by Christina Service and her people that has shown that there's been a decline in the frequency of the allele that drives this white variant from 56% down to 25% on Gribble Island, which is one of the main areas. So this is now a major conservation issue. It could be because of random events, or it could be because we're losing bears, or it could be because previous estimates weren't so good. So she was able to show some very nice data. And what she did, so this is once again Western British Columbia. This is the Great Bear Rainforest. Those areas in red are the concentration of the G allele. So here is where the main spirit bears live, in this relatively small area of about 50 kilometers by 50 kilometers. The allele is found in these bears up here, but they're usually black bears that are just carrying it. So this is really the heart of what is taking place. And these striated areas, these cross-hatched areas, are the conservation areas. And what Christina has pointed out is that there are vast areas of the spirit bear distribution that are not currently conserved. So these individuals are subject to habitat loss, to human-induced mortalities, be it direct mortality from being shot or from being disturbed, or indirect from being disturbed. So one of the problems we face here with the spirit bear is we're not looking to connect these populations too well, because we don't want black bears to come in and dilute out the spirit bear, so we have no more spirit bears left. So how are we going to maintain this isolation is a big conservation issue. There's also the issues of the spirit bears and the salmon. Salmon, the Pacific salmon that the bears feed off, are declining. They're immensely important to the ecology, to the nutrient flow of the rainforest. And to keep this habitat working and operational, we need salmon to be running and we need bears to be taking place. So one of the concerns is the loss of the salmon as they come up the river. And this is a photograph I've taken as salmon are swimming up and they're trying to lay their eggs. They lay their eggs in these very shallow areas. So if you lie by the river, you can photograph the salmon as they're laying their eggs. And this, of course, is when the bears are trying to catch them and walk away with them. There's some very interesting discussion, which Christina's paper dismisses to some extent because it doesn't provide evidence, that the white bears are at a selective advantage. So being a white bear, you're better able to catch salmon than if you are a black bear. And the argument goes that if you're a black bear, then you're going to put a shadow onto the water. The bears, their salmon see you more easily, and so they swim away. But if you're a white bear, you look more like the sky, and so you're more likely to be able to catch the salmon and be able to be successful. And there is evidence that the white bears, in fact, do better at doing this. So you could say that spirit bears were doubly important. Not only are they a specialized genotypic variant that we should conserve, but they're also important for driving the whole ecology of this Great Bear Rainforest. One of the other things that's taking place is that grizzly bears are moving on to Kermode Bear Island. And this is a young grizzly, probably just a 2-year-old, 2.5 years old. And they're expanding their distribution. And while they've been mostly on the mainland, they're now swimming over to the islands and starting to invade the islands. And if they do that, then they've been shown to reduce salmon consumption by the Kermode bears by as much as 40%. So these bears push away the black bears. Bears have a hierarchy. The biggest bear always wins, and that's always the biggest grizzly that's there. These bears were scared stiff of the big grizzly bears, and they would run away as soon as any bear, even a black bear, turned up because they were so scared. But the black bears and the Kermode bears, particularly the weaker bears like Maha, are at the bottom of this hierarchy. So they could come in and be another reason which can cause problems for the spirit bears. Oh, don't know what that slide was. I also want to finish by talking about the cultural significance of these bears. These bears are really very important to the First Nations people. And there's several communities of First Nations people up there. And one of them, the Katsu, have this oral history that the raven, which is symbolized in this painting by these people, which is called Weejit, is the raven. The raven is called Weejit in their words, and he's known as the trickster, because what the raven does is it comes and does naughty things. And it's said, or the history of the people is that the raven came and painted every 10th bear white to remind people what the last ice age was like. And so that people remembered that we had the ice age when it was very cold and very difficult to live. And here is a white bear who's known as the protector. The bears are known as the protectors, the sensible people of the community. So we went into Hartley Bay, which is one of the bigger communities nearby. But once again, it's a very isolated community. No roads in, no roads out. Everything has to come by sea. Relatively small community, and quite a sad community, because it's clear that a lot of families have left, moved to the bigger cities of Vancouver, to the mainland, looking for jobs and things like that. But I'm pleased to say that the bears, spirit bear tours has become an important ecotourism. This is a photograph taken inside one of their longhouses, which is one of their community centres where the people sit round and discuss what they're going to do and what's going to happen. So this is a part of their tradition. And as I said, it's very important to them that there's ecotourism taking place. Now, these are groups of people coming to photograph and to just visit the Great Bear Rainforest. And I think there's a black bear, looks like a black bear just sitting over there on the left. So just to say a bit about the photography, I used Sony cameras for this. I used Sony A9, and I used mostly a 200-600 because the 600 lens hadn't been released at that point. I do most of my processing in a program called Capture One, which personally I think is a much better converter than Lightroom, and I think it's the best raw converter you can get. And you can do almost everything you can in Lightroom that you can do, in Capture One that you can do in Lightroom, and in the other Adobe program. I've just forgotten its name. As I said, I used Topaz Denoise to take out the noise of some of these images, and Denoise AI is a fantastic piece of technology, fantastic piece of software, so helpful. So you don't have to worry about noise anymore if you can use the Topaz to help it go. And this guy, David Grover, is just a wonderful person at teaching you about Capture One, and all his lessons are free and online, and you can get and learn this program really fast and really simply. So just to finish, I'm going to, this is one that had terrible noise, just to show you once again. I'm going to play this film. And this film, you can see the bear moving up the stream, coming slowly towards us as it walks up the stream. But I'm going to move this up a little bit as she comes up the stream. She's obviously looking for fish as she comes up, and she's getting closer and closer. So about here, I'm just going to let it run again. So this was taken just with a GoPro. I just put a GoPro on a rock and just left it, and then moved back and left it running to try and record her as she sort of came up the river. And this is Maha again, this wonderful. You can hear the rain, you can hear the water thing, and you can see how stiff she is as she's walking through the river looking for salmon, looking for any fish or any form of food. She came incredibly close. Fantastic, fantastic observation to see. So I'm going to finish that and answer any questions. I'll just show you a couple more photographs. That's my son Tom with his friend Steve sitting in the rainforest. That's a black bear. There's another bear. But I think I'll finish on that one. So Hermes, Nisha, are you still there?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Very much.
Now I've got to find how to stop this. How do I stop my screen share? I'm not sure. Can you do that, or do I?
Yeah, I can.
Hermes can.
Oh, I can see. Yeah, there we go. Oh, you can see me. That's okay.
We can always see you. It was fabulous, PT. It was, the science and your experience, the journey, the place. We had a proper tour. Thank you.
But,
And especially
well,
the
I
details.
thought it would, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. So I thought it was interesting to see an animal that, most people don't see, and
Yeah.
one where there's some interesting conservation issues. I hope the genetics wasn't too much, but if you've done any bit of genetics, I think that might remind you of what you had at school. But here it is acting out. And then these problems we have in conservation and how important it is culturally. And it's interesting to think about how important other animals are in the world to cultural groups. Obviously, the lion is very important to the Maasai. The tiger is very important in many ways to different groups of people in Asia. So I think and it's what a spectacular animal. What a just beautiful, beautiful creature. And when you're lying there, just lying on the beach, waiting and waiting, and then she just walks past you and you can take one of those shots. Wow. I just love it. Just love it.
Have you taken in a wide angle?
Yes, in fact, I think some of those were wide angles. The ones where she was really close were wide angles. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was using a 16,
35.
5, yeah. Yeah. I had that and my 200, 600. And I had a tripod with me as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have one question from Gursharan Kalsi. Do we know why there is no geographical overlap between spirit bears and the grizzlies?
So I think this is, if you go back historically, we think the spirit bears were isolated by the last ice age. And as the ice went, so they grew back into the islands. The grizzly bears were isolated, but they've also been heavily persecuted. And there's still big parts of central British Columbia where grizzlies don't exist because of historical persecution of them. But I'm very pleased to say the persecution of grizzlies has stopped or it's been greatly reduced. And now we see the grizzlies coming back in numbers in a lot of places. They're not even on Vancouver Island. You won't see grizzlies there. There's just black bears and coastal wolves on Vancouver Island, but you won't see them on the mainland. So I think they've spread from the mainland and come to the coast primarily for the salmon. It's a very good question. Very good question indeed.
Yeah. And we have one more question from Acha Netaji asking, sir, is the temperature condition matters for spirit bears to get survived?
Very interesting. So I think if we saw climate change the way the ocean currents move and influence the rainfall, then yes, this would be a disaster because we would lose that temperate rainforest. So the temperate rainforest is really important. It's a really important habitat. You know, we think about tropical rainforests, and of course they're important, but these temperate rainforests, there aren't very many of them. And as I said, this is the biggest one in the world. So I think climate change could destroy that in that respect. So we must be cognizant, I think, about what's taking place there. But the great thing about it is it is wilderness. There are no roads, which is just wonderful to be away from vehicles. Just truly wonderful.
And is the tourism supporting the conservation side of spirit bears?
So that's a very important question. Thank you for asking that, because Christina's study was actually paid for in part by the local First Nations people. So the funding of that research to find out how many there were, where they were, and what needs to be done was done by the First Nations people. There was money from other places as well, but a spectacular study, a very interesting and important study, but really came to fruition because of the drive of the First Nations people. And because it's important to them culturally, and because of the ecotourism, that's very important. So there's more and more people getting involved in it. The Git-Gat communities and some of the Kitsasu communities getting involved in it, and that's just wonderful to see. And that's because they have this connection with the environment and with the animals. It's just really superb.
What do you think was your biggest challenge while photographing this?
The light, the lack of light. It's just you're struggling there all the time. That's why I said, wow, with Topaz denoise, I've been able to produce images now that I couldn't have produced when I took them a year ago. 8 months.
In fact, we always have these questions about noise reduction. I think we need to keep a note on this particular software so that we can share.
Yeah, Topaz denoise AI, and changing weekly. They're just upgrading it. It's a fantastic, unbelievable piece of software. You got to, and it does it very fast, does it very effectively. And Topaz has a whole studio of softwares. They have I do my sharpening in Capture One, but I think some of the sharpening they do with their Topaz Sharpen is also really good as well. And I don't think it's excessively expensive. I think it's like $60 or something, or $50 for that.
So another question is, when you use this denoise, is it going to affect the sharpness?
So there's, yes, of course, it depends. Well, there are sliders. So, if you put too much in, of course, you're going to, if you put too much denoise in, you're going to lose the sharpening. So there's a balance. But they also do it they can do both for you. And you say, just do it automatically. Tell me what you think. And then it does both the sharpening and the denoise. And it says, this is what we think. And then you can, and there's a slider for looking before and after. So you can say, well, tweak this one and let's just increase the denoise a bit. Is that better or not? So it's, A, it's easy to use, and B, it's very careful, done very carefully.
Yeah.
You can overcook it. Of course you can. You can over sharpen, you can over denoise. But
that's exactly what Cynthia is saying. I use denoise, especially for my pictures taken in the tropical rainforest, where the lack of light is a big issue.
Yeah.
Almost in all the rainforest, it is a challenging thing.
Yeah.
And Cynthia and her beautiful, spectacular macro photography.
Definitely.
She's using fill flash there to try and just get that light in there. But with the spirit bears, you're not allowed to use flash at all, which is fine, because that's what the First Nations people have decided, and I respect that decision. And I think I don't think you really want to be in such a wonderful wilderness place and see the flash going off when people are photographed spirit bears. But they do it really well. So what you do is you meet up with the local First Nations guides. They walk you in to a river where the bears are. and then you just sit there quietly, and you sit there all day, and then the bears come and go, and they're just charming people, and they say you can go a bit closer if you want to, or I would much rather I think you need to pull back because this bear is coming this way. And sometimes you're photographing this bear, and then she'll say, move back a bit because there's a bear behind us. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. Delightful people. Really, really, really wonderful experience. And Tom and I loved it. Just absolutely adored it.
So what about
Tom's photo? Whale breaching. Wow. So jealous of that.
So other than the genetic issues, I mean, what all are the other threats which these bears are facing?
Well, there is continual problems with deforestation of these big forests in British Columbia, and I know you live in Vancouver, so that's so I would strongly recommend you go to look at some of the issues. And there's a guy called Ian McAllister who's been running this Bear Rainforest conservation group, which is just fantastic, making people aware of what the issues are. But without doubt, timber removal, which is basically equal to habitat loss. Then as industrializing as well, as people move in and start setting up industries, there's often a conflict with bears, and bears then come and try and feed and things like this. The usual sort of things you hear about with polar bears and people and things like that, they become conflict. Interesting, I didn't see it as an issue with my black bears at home and as you saw, when Bruno comes walking around, I just say, come on, and just say, come on, move along now, Bruno. I don't think you should really be coming this way. I think you ought to keep back a bit. So, but there is human conflict, and we have black bears killed on the roads and things. So I think there are always issues like that, but they're nearly all human-induced issues.
Yeah, I don't think there is no more questions from anybody so far.
Today's World Photography Day.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Fantastic.
See, there is one more question from Acha Nidaji. Tell me.
Why genetic bears are not seen in other places in the world?
So I think that's a very interesting question. I think there are genetic issues, and if you look at our Paws Trails Aware magazine, you'll see that we've discovered there are more issues to do with giraffe conservation, where there are some groups of some subspecies of giraffes which are really suffering at the moment, and particularly those in places like Nigeria, Malawi, and northwest, south of the Sahel on the western side. There are some issues with some of those subspecies, and so the interesting thing about this is this remarkable color polymorphism, and that's an issue which is not quite unique, but it's pretty special. And so it illustrates very well some of the genetic problems we have in conservation. So one of the big issues in conservation is deciding what a species is. All elephants in Africa were put together as one species, and then more recently they were divided into two. And now we have the forest elephant and the savanna elephant. So your conservation of one species is different, and the forest elephant is in desperate need of habitat problems, while the savanna elephant is suffering from terrible persecution. So different strategies for those species. And then, suddenly we think, well, maybe there's two lion species here, or are they subspecies, and what we have to do. So conservation issues are big issues in conservation, I would say. Did I say that right? Genetic issues are big issues in conservation.
But and he was particularly asking about genetic bears.
Bears. Why it is not?
Why it's not seen in other parts of the world, like white grizzly or something like that?
Oh, I see. I suspect.
Or black polar bear.
Well, there's some. So of course, polar bears evolved from grizzly bears, and they would have been brown bears in the past, and then there was this mutation, and then they became white bears. And of course, there was selection for white bears because being white in the snow is an obvious thing to be. I suspect such mutants occur regularly in the natural world, and you may well have seen white individuals. I've got a feeling, I mean, there are white lions, and there are white other animals as well, but there's often selection against that color morph. So I think this has existed here because this is a small population. I also think there may be something in this idea that white bears are slightly better at catching salmon, so it might be advantageous. But because it's a small population, that could be just random events as well. And that's part of the problem that we're discussing in science conservation at the moment.
I think,
right. Yeah.
I think that
we
was
have covered almost all the segments now.
So another thing is like our next session, that is on coming on Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
by Preeti and Prashant.
Preeti and Prashant, and the topic is going to cover how you can. It's going to be mainly focusing on composition, composing in the wild. So that's going to be the topic. They're an amazing couple with fabulous imagery. So wait for it.
Yeah, they have traveled almost all the national parks in African India.
Side, yes. So it's going to be a great experience. And on another note, our next edition of magazine of PT Aware, it's going to be focusing on great hornbill, great Indian hornbill. So if you have images, please do share it across to us. You can either email it to us, or we prefer if you can register in our website, log in, click on contribute, and upload your images. So that's on great hornbill. That's going to be next PT Aware. And the editor himself is here. So we are looking forward for more images from all of you. On that note, a special big thanks, PT. It was such an amazing session with all the science, with all the photography, and with all the travel journey, and including
and
the
happy to see you on this World Photographic Day.
Yeah. Happy World Photography Day to everybody.
To everyone, yes.
Yeah, support Paws Trails on this wonderful day.
Yeah, so
hope to travel from here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So that was it. That was Peter talking on spirit bears. Had a spectacular session. So that's what happens when people like science people who are photographers to come into board and explain things. So a perfect combination of science and art. So thanks to Peter on that note. And thank you all. And if you find this program interesting, the whole idea behind this is to spread awareness. So please do subscribe to our channel. Please share the channel to as much as possible so that we can reach out to more people. And it's time, COVID. Please be safe. Please take care. And I'll be seeing you on every day for hopefully for next 360 days more on one new story on every day. And if I'm going to miss someday, Hermes is going to take care of it. So I'm just trying to fill the gaps. Okay, so it's going to be a combination in between at least, but I'll try to be there all possible time.
Okay.
All right then. On that note, see you tomorrow. And on Saturday we have a fabulous session. Don't forget to send the hornbill images, please.
Indian great hornbill.
Yes. All right then. See you all. Take care. Be safe.